Welcome to Data Analysis 2, where I'll be teaching you how to use pivot tables and something called the VLOOKUP to answer some questions that we want to be answered when it comes to our data. More specific questions. So for example, what are the top 5 rated movies? I should put that in there. Rated movies in the action category specifically. So to do that, we've got a couple of steps to do first. So here is our data, and we got, just like we did in Data Analysis 1. The first thing we want to do is make a new sheet with only the action movies. So if you remember correctly, from Data Analysis 1, I want to filter out just the action movies. So I go over here, and I make sure the 0 is not selected. And now, if you look, all the ones that are action are selected. Of course, make sure that you don't have any previous filters activated. Remember the little dot here shows you if there's a filter activated or not. So now that I have it, the only information I really need in this case is column A and B, their movie ID along with their name. So I'm going to hold Shift down and click on A and B. I'm going to copy, which might take a second or two. I'm going to make a new sheet, and I'm going to paste. And that's what I'm going to call this one. I double click on sheet 1. You can do this, computer. There we go. I'm going to call this one action underscore M for underscore movies. All right. Now what we want is to know which one of these has the highest rating. So we have to think of which one of these 3 tabs has ratings in it. Users, let's go to the top, let's have a look. Okay, it has nothing about rating movies. Vote, okay, obviously does. And we have something called score, all right, which we looked at with the initial data analysis, understanding what score was all about. So what we want is, logically, we want to have the movie IDs and what score they're associated with. So to do that, obviously we could do it the long way. I could go to movie ID 1, add 0.6, find the next movie ID 1, wherever that might be down below, okay, and do that way. But that would take forever. There's another way of doing it, and this is called pivot tables. Pivot tables basically takes information and puts it together. So under this tab here called data, there is a little box right here called pivot table. And if I click on it, it now assumes what you want. So be careful, because this is not what we want, all right? Now the only 2 boxes we really care about is our row labels and our values. So I'm going to take weight and drag it out. Okay, and you can already see the pivot table has changed. So let me see, what do I want? Well, I want all of my movies to be on the left side here. So I don't want user ID, so I'm going to check that off. And my score's in the wrong place, so I'm going to check that off right now. So I want my movie ID to show up on the left side, and the computer is smart enough to understand that's what I want. So every single, if I go back to vote, every single cell that has movie ID 1 is now all put together. Where did I go here? Is all put together in that pivot table. So obviously I lost my pivot table here, so let's bring that in again. So movie ID, all the ones are here. Now what I want is this, you know, this little symbol means the sum of. So adding together, I want to add up all the scores for each of my movies. So if I click on score, and look here, it already knew basically what I wanted. It kind of guessed what I wanted. So here it says all movie 1 had a total score of 4,283. So it's done all the math for me. Let me just delete this sheet because I didn't need it. So in sheet 3, I have all of my votes or ratings. So I'm going to call this one rating. And it really matters how you spell this. You'll see why later. So movie 1 had this, movie 2 had this. Now, what the question though was what was the top 5 action movies? Not all of these movie IDs are action movies. So how can we pass this information to my action movie? Well, this is where that thing called VLOOKUP comes into play. So under my column E, row 2, I'm going to put an equal sign. I'm going to click on V, and it's automatically going to fill up with what I want, VLOOKUP. Use my right arrow key. I'm going to open up my brackets. And so what I want, the computer's looking for is look up what values. I'm going to look up value 6. Okay, so the movie ID 6. And what sheet, so put a comma. What sheet am I going to use? Well, I'm going to use my rating sheet that I did before. So rating, make sure it's capitals if you put a capital R. Then exclamation mark, that just means it's a sheet, so the computer understands it's a sheet. Comma, now remember that my information in the rating sheet was in both column A and B. So I'm going to do column A, column B, comma, and what I want back is the rating, right? The number of the rating, and that was in the second column. So I'm going to put 2 and then close my bracket. And I have some little error here, and I got to figure out what I did wrong. So give me 1 second. Okay, my bad was that I put a comma here. So after the exclamation mark, just put A colon, 2 colons B and 2, and there is my number. So for heat, the movie ID heat got 1,980 votes. Or rating, or the total rating was this. So what I do is this little box in the corner here, I can take it and drag it down all the way to the end. And so now I have all my ratings for those movies. So I'm going to name this one rating. But now I don't want every single one. All I want is the top 5. So if I go up to ratings and I click on my filter, which we know how to use. Now, I'm not too sure if a setting or desetting is going to work in this case. Well, let's give it a shot. No, see, nothing's happening if I do it this way. So what I do instead is this. I am going to deselect all of them and go to the bottom and select my top 5 movies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we go. Pulp Fiction, as you can see, had the highest, 11,581, followed by True Lies. So that's how you write in your answer. You're going to write all of those 5. So do it yourself, make sure you got it right. So that's the first case for rated top 5 movies. Pause this video and then go on to the top movies in animation. On to the voted on. Now voted on is different than rating, okay? Voted on means how many people have voted on that movie. So it's not how many, like the score is how many times basically the movie ID shows up in this information. So the first thing we've got to do is, what are we doing it for? We're doing it for the classic category. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to make a new spreadsheet just for the classic movies, which you should know how to do. A new sheet called Classic M with all the classic movies. Just in case you didn't know what I did, I went to classic, make sure all the ones were here, and I got rid of my filter for action. All right, so now in my vote, what I want to do is I want to count how many times 1 shows up. And again, we can use a pivot table. It's a little bit different in this case. So my pivot this time, table, if it ever loads, would be nice. Let me pause it till it loads. All right, so here's my pivot table. And again, I'm just going to clear things that I don't want. So again, I want my movie ID to show up on the left side because I want to know how many times 1 shows up. In this case, as I said, I want to know how many times movie ID shows up. So I'm going to sum how many times this shows up. But in this case, be very careful. I don't want, I'll make this bigger. I don't want the sum of them. I want to count how many times it shows up. So if I click on the I here, I get this little box that shows up. And as you notice here, I got different options. And in this case, I want counts. Count of the movie ID. And if I push OK, my numbers have changed. Now let me just check one thing here. Count numbers. Does this change? No, it doesn't. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Now I know that the movie number 1 has been counted 5,445 times, which is different than the rating. Okay, it's how many times it's being counted. So now what I want to do is pass this information over to my classic tab. So let me go to column H, which is my first one here. I'm going to do my VLOOKUP, so equals V. And I want to put this formula in the description for you guys so you can copy paste it later on. So I'll open up my bracket. I'm going to use A2 to start off with, comma. In this case, I am going to be using sheet 5. So let me push escape, because I should really rename this one, because once we're making a lot of sheets, it's going to get confusing. So this one I'm going to call voting. How many times it's been voted? You can name it whatever you want. I know it's vote here, but in this case I'm calling voting. So in classic M, let's move this over so it's not. All right, so classic M equals V lookup. I'm going to use my A2 value to start with, comma. I'm going to use my voting, and then exclamation mark. Again, all the information I need in the other sheet is in column A and B, and I want it to return the second value. Now push enter. So taxi driver was mentioned or voted on 3,979 times. Let me drag it all the way down. Oops. There it goes. It's all the way to the bottom. All right. And again, I can just use my filter, which I won't do because you guys can do it yourself, to determine the top 5. And the last one we're going to look at is percentages. So I'll do this one for you, percentages of males versus females. So let me just pause it for a second, and I'll get right back to you. All right, so percentages of males versus females. So which tab do I want? Well, I want users, because that's the only one where it has information about gender. And I want to make a pivot table for males and females. So obviously, first of all, I don't want anything where it does not have a gender. So if I bring up my filters, let me just go back to the top, select gender, filters. I want to only have males and females. There they are. And now I don't have to create another sheet. I just have to create a pivot table for my information. So if I go to data, pivot table, what I want is on the left side, I want the genders. Okay. And I want to count corrupted. So in this one, we have gender on the left side, and we want to count how many times gender is done. Now, just like the last time, we don't want to sum up we want to count how many times female has been or male has been done. So make sure it's on count. But in our case, we want the percentage. So what we can do is this. On the little I here, I go to options, and I can ask it how I want to show up. So show data as percentage of total, and push OK. And then it switches the information to what I need. And that should be all that you need to complete 1 to 9. Once you have all of your answers, come up and show me. Good luck.